Hello and welcome, I'm your Code Monkey. So lately there's been a very strange conversation blowing up. Supposedly a ton of devs are angry because an excellent game came out and gamers are calling them out for being lazy and not making good games on purpose. Although this whole thing makes me feel like I'm crazy because I don't see anything like that. I haven't seen any anger or panic coming from any devs. The only thing I saw from devs when the game came out was people just congratulating them on their success and making an excellent game. Now maybe that's just me, that's just specifically my feed. I'm a solo indie dev, I'm not part of the AAA industry. My Twitter feed is mainly just Unity indie devs, so maybe I'm just stuck in my own bubble, or maybe this whole thing is really just manufactured to get a bunch of clicks. It all started on this IGN video titled Baldurs Gate 3 is causing some developers to panic. Then this blew up and tons of other comments and commentary videos made it sound like there's a large amount of developers that are supposedly angry because Larian Studios, they just raised the bar by so much which makes other devs look bad. Now I've done some research to try to find out if this is indeed correct, but I could not find much. I went on Twitter and I tried searching for Baldurs Gate 3 devs, and there's all kinds of really strange comments. Kinda disappointing to see AAA devs complain about Baldurs Gate 3, game devs being angry about Baldurs Gate 3 is so funny. There are game devs who are mad at Baldurs Gate 3 because it's too good. Originally had no interest in Baldurs Gate 3, but devs panicking that they must do their jobs properly because of it has been tempting me to buy the game. So lots of comments on apparently people talking about all kinds of panicky and angry game devs, but I really can't find any of those supposed game devs. So this whole thing genuinely makes me feel like I'm taking crazy pills, or maybe my Twitter feed is just broken in some way. If there are indeed all of these developers supposedly angry or jealous about the game, why can't I just find them? The closest thing to a negative comment that I can actually find is something like this. Just some devs who are basically worried that when a game on this massive scale, when this finds such success, it leads to management pushing for bigger and bigger scale, bigger and bigger games, which in turn can lead to more and more crunch, which is already a big problem in the industry. Then some more tweets simply pointing out how the game is both awesome and massive. Again, just pointing out the scale and the excellent talent that this team has, all of this is positive. No one is arguing for worse games, just pointing out how some factors that made this game cannot be easily replicated. So that's really it, I really don't see any angry or panicky devs. Basically after researching all this, it seems like this IGN video and this whole controversy just seems to me like one of those manufactured outrages where you just take a comment from a single person and just twist it in a negative way and just blow it out of proportion. The whole thing seems to be based off just a single tweet from a single dev and not really something related to the entire game dev community. Not to mention that this tweet isn't even really negative. In fact, it's actually quite the opposite. It's pointing out all of the excellent things that Larian Studios did very well that came to this excellent game. It also simply points out the various advantages that they had in making this great game. Advantages that not necessarily every studio has access to, like in terms of talent and resources, which is definitely absolutely true. Now, don't get me wrong, the big studios from Activision and EA, they definitely do have enough money. But even if you're willing to spend an unlimited amount of time and money on a game, that is no guarantee of success or quality. Basically, the controversy seems to be people saying that devs are lazy, and that is why all games are not as awesome as Baldur's Gate 3. Now, here on this channel, where the audience is mainly indie devs, I always highly advise against spending years and years working on a game. Sure, you could technically spend years and end up making a masterpiece like Stardew Valley and sell millions of copies of an excellent game. That's technically possible. But that is an outlier. By definition, you should definitely not expect your game to be an outlier. You should not risk your livelihood. You should not risk going homeless with the expectation that your game will be one of the best games ever made. Maybe it will be, but it probably won't. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't try your best. You definitely should try your best, but despite your best efforts, you will likely not make the next Stardew Valley. The way I see the argument in this tweet is exactly the same thing. It is not saying that devs shouldn't aim to make excellent games like Baldur's Gate 3. It just means that this game is an outlier both in terms of resources and in terms of success. All the other reference tweets, all of them just say the exact same thing. No one is arguing for worse games, they're just pointing out that an outlier is by definition an outlier. I believe what he was also trying to say was simply don't expect this insane level of scale and polish coming from every single RPG, especially the ones made by indie devs or small to medium-sized teams, which definitely do not have 400 people and tens of millions of dollars to spend on making one game over 7 years. Personally, as a solo indie dev, I've been on the receiving end of some players with some very harsh demands. I've received comments on my $3 games asking why the game is dead and hasn't received updates despite being several years old. Also, I'm currently working on my upcoming automation game. I'm trying my absolute best, but I'm pretty certain that my game will not be as good or as successful as something like Factorio. And if a player were to ask me, okay, so why should I play your game and not Factorio? My answer to that is you shouldn't. You should go play Factorio. That game is a masterpiece. But I'm guessing you're not going to play just one single game for your entire life, so after you're done with Factorio, maybe give my game a try. Not every game needs to be a masterpiece. There's tons of space in the industry for different games with different scales and different levels of quality. The masterpieces should absolutely be celebrated, but they are by definition the outliers. And this tweet is pointing out that even for big studios that do have the resources, spending that time and money is no guarantee of quality. That's really it. Trying to replicate that process can lead to either the same success or it can kill entire groups of studios. One example is the Callisto Protocol. That one came out last year. They spent a ton of time and money making that game. They also had a very experienced, very talented team. They called it a quad A game. But despite all of those resources and devs that were definitely very passionate about making the best game possible, the director was even the director of the original Dead Space. So very talented and tons of funds, but despite their best efforts and resources, the game did not end up as good as they like. To the point where sadly, recently they actually had to do some layoffs. That's exactly the point that this tweet is making. I really don't see how this tweet can be read as dev arguing for worse games or envy of a successful game or something like that. On tweet, he literally says, "I'm deeply excited about what the lovely folks at Larian accomplished with Baldurs Gate 3. It is simply pointing out that an outlier is by definition an outlier. All the other related tweets, those are all in agreement that the game is excellent. I certainly cannot find a ton of other devs somehow panicking because an excellent game came out. Maybe there are indeed a ton of devs who for some reason want to make terrible games and this excellent game won't force them to do better and somehow they're angry at that. Maybe that's the case, even though every single dev that I know, they love what they do and they're trying to make the best games possible. Or maybe given how the video is based off a single tweet and it's intentionally twisting that tweet into a negative light, maybe this whole thing is really not based on reality at all. It's all just about getting clicks, which has certainly been very successful. This IGN video has over 1 million views, whereas most of their regular videos they just get 20 to 50k views. So if the goal was some manufactured outrage in order to get some clicks, then congrats because this strategy was clearly very successful. But based on my research, it does not seem to be based on reality at all. Really, the only reaction that I can find from devs are people celebrating the fact that an excellent game came out and found massive success. That's just objectively good for anyone working in the industry or anyone who loves playing games. Now, do let me know your thoughts in the comments. Am I somehow, some way completely missing a huge swath of devs who are somehow angry at this game? I really don't see it, but again, Twitter is different from everyone and the search does seem to suck quite a bit. So I could be missing something, definitely do let me know if I'm wrong.